This is a huge mess. A little bit smaller of a mess. An even smaller mess. Slightly bigger of a mess. All these trees are a massive mess, but this isn't my fault. So today I'm gonna do what any good Minecrafter is gonna do, and I'm gonna ignore it and push it off to the next episode. I wanted to make the best and coolest storage room entrance you have ever seen, and I have recruited the help of Rebel, one of my amazing community members, to accomplish that goal. And by the end of this episode, I think you're going to agree that Mumbo Jumbo himself wishes he had this storage room entrance. So let's get to it. Oh yeah, one quick thing that I don't want to forget before we get started. Bundles are in the game now. You do have to turn on experimental features to get them, but Prowl and I made the executive decision to go ahead and put it on the Bedrock Guide world. So here we are. We've got bundles. And bundles have already cleaned up my... Oh no. Oh no. I already see a problem. I was about to say that bundles have already cleaned up my inventory, but it's cleaned out my inventory. This bundle was full of redstone gear and now it's all gone. Well, I guess I gotta tell Prowl not to use these for now. Whoopsie! The first thing that I'm going to do with this redstone door is notice that I missed some things on the ceiling up there. I'll get it later. I'm gonna go back here to the back of the room and line up with this scaffolding right here, which should be in line with that scaffolding back there, which is the center of the entrance to this room. I've given myself enough buffer space on all sides of the room just so that I'm not going right up against the wall. So I'm gonna leave a 2-block gap right here and I'm gonna go up 4 blocks. And then on top of this block right here, I'm gonna place a downward facing observer, and then I can remove all of these blocks right here. Next, I'm going to put 1 temporary block right here, followed by a piece of wool right there, and then I'll break that block and put a piston facing toward the observer, and then I'm gonna give myself 3 blocks of space and break these 2 with another piston facing toward the observer on this side, and then I'll break this because I'm gonna do something else on the other side of this piston here in a little bit. Also, I didn't really check for this, and it's kind of too late now. I'm gonna cross my fingers and hope it works, but you should probably chunk align this so that it's not crossing chunk borders. Pistons crossing chunk borders, not a great idea, but we're gonna go with it. So on top of this observer, I'm gonna put 2 sticky pistons, and then I'm just gonna put 1 temporary block right here. I will replace this with what will eventually be the door, and because this is going to be a 3x3 door, I'm gonna put 1 more piece of wool here and 1 more piece of wool here, and that will make up the bottom portion of the door. Okay, so it's early in the video, and I've already realized I've made a mistake. It's okay, not a big one. I'm gonna move this observer over. The observer will go here when the door is in the closed state, but we're starting it with the open state, so the observer needs to go here. Still facing down, but grab your observer and put it on this piston, and we should be good to keep going. From here, I'm gonna take another piece of wool, and then another piece of wool, right up against the bottom section of the door, and then I'm gonna break that one, and then I'll put 1 sticky piston facing back toward this bottom section of 3, and you know what, while we're at it, I'm just gonna go ahead and replace these because I'm using the wool as my scaffolding for the redstone and I don't want to get that confused, so hang tight. I'm gonna get the actual blocks. It absolutely does not matter what type of blocks you use here as long as they are not immovable objects like obsidian. So for my door, I'm gonna use tough blocks. That's the bottom section of the door complete. Then I can take another sticky piston and put it on top of this temporary block right here, and then I can go ahead and break that wool, and then stack 2 more sticky pistons directly on top of that one, and then 3 blocks for the door right there. Then I'm gonna put 1 piece of wool directly on top of this block right here, followed by 3 more pieces for the door, 1 temporary wool right here in the middle, and then another one right there, break that wool, and then a downward facing sticky piston right here on this middle block. Then I can come over to the other side and put 1 piece of temporary wool right here with more door blocks, break that temporary wool, and then just like we did on this side, I'm gonna line 3 sticky pistons on this side of the door as well. And when you're done, it should look something like this. And you know what, just so you can see it a little bit better, I'm gonna put a couple of torches back here on the wall and light the place up. Ah, yes, much better. Now that the basic framework for the door is in place with all of the sticky pistons attached, it's time to start working on the circuitry that makes this thing actually work. And the first part of that circuitry is going to be going over to the left-hand side of the door, on top of this observer, and on top of this piston right here, and putting 2 pieces of wool, with 1 piece of redstone, and 1 repeater going into the side of this sticky piston right here, and it's going to be set to 4 ticks. And again, you've got to make sure that these repeater timings are perfect, otherwise the door might implode on itself. So 4 ticks on that repeater. And then over on the opposite side, I'm gonna put 1 piece of wool on top of this piston, but not a wool right here. And another repeater facing this direction, also set to 4 ticks. If I were to go and place a redstone torch on this right now with nothing else, you're gonna see a couple of things happen. First, this block is going to power that piston below and push this observer over, causing this bottom piston to tick at 1 pulse up and down. And because this is delayed by 4 ticks, this piston will retract by the time this repeater goes off, and then allow this piston to push up. So here's what that looks like. That is super cool, but we want this block to get to the very center of where the door is gonna close, and right now, it doesn't do that. That's where this block comes in, along with this piston right here. I'm going to take an observer and face it directly into the side of this redstone dust, and then place 1 wool block right here, 1 redstone dust on top of that wool block, and then a repeater on top of this observer facing into this piston, and it will be set to 3 ticks of delay. And now, when we place this torch down right here, nothing happened. And here's why. Because this observer actually is still stuck right here. I need to reset this observer. And the easy way to do that is to grab a button and push it back over. So now, if I try to power this circuit as is, we should see some magic happen. Perfect. If you didn't really understand what just happened there, this observer gets pushed over, which powers this piston, which extends this piston, pushing this piston upward, which then pushes this block up by 1. When this retracts, this piston will immediately push this block over into place before this piston extends again. Make sense? Good. If not, just go back and rewatch it. We're moving on. Right now we have the difficult part done for the closing circuit, and that's getting these 2 blocks into proper position. So now the easy part, moving all of these blocks to close the door. And the actual real hard part is the sequence to reopen the door, and we'll get to that here in just a few minutes. But for now, I'm gonna take 1 redstone torch and put it on the side of this piston right here. And out of the side of that redstone torch, I'm going to put an upward facing repeater. It's kind of hard to do, but just give it a go. And I actually don't want that to be extended, so I am gonna temporarily break that torch and grab 1 piece of obsidian, and I'll put it right there, and then put that redstone torch down again. I want the power transfer, but I don't want the repeater to move. So obsidian there, and then 1 wool block here, followed by a redstone torch, 1 wool block here, followed by a redstone torch, and then 1 wool block out of the side of this torch with redstone dust on top, and then 1 block right here to make sure that these 2 redstone dust do not overlap, and then 1 repeater on top of this wool block set to default, which is 1 tick of delay. Then on top of this redstone torch back here, 1 more piece of wool, followed by another block here, 1 redstone dust, and then a block right here, followed by a torch, another block on top of that torch, another redstone torch right here, with a couple of temporary blocks right here. I'll break these 2 temporary blocks, and then put a downward facing sticky piston right underneath this block right here. That's not downward facing. One moment, there we go. With a single redstone block directly underneath, attached to the sticky part of the sticky piston. And let's pause there for just a minute to kind of look at what we've done so far. I'm gonna reset this piston, which then means I need to reset that block. And now, if I power this redstone right here, again, these 2 blocks should move, but now so should these 3, as long as I did everything correctly. Let's give it a quick test. I didn't do everything correctly. Whoopsie. What happened? Oh yes, I forgot one crucial thing. Redstone torch on the other side of this piston right here. So redstone torch on this piston, redstone torch on this piston, and it's still not working. Is this it right here? There it is, redstone dust there. Allow me to take a step back and get rid of all of this junk. Please, feel free to take a look at all of this in spectator mode so that you don't mess up the build like I did. If you miss even 1 piece of redstone, the thing falls apart. It doesn't work. Take it all in, take some screenshots. I know y'all thought BluJay was perfect, but I make mistakes too, and you know what? It's good to see our mistakes so we can fix them, right? So let's keep going. Right here, I'm gonna put a redstone torch out of the side of this piston, followed by a block directly on top of that redstone torch. And this one right here is actually temporary. I can go ahead and break it, and then put a redstone torch right here, which is going to interact with redstone that I'm gonna put right here to extend this piston when the whole thing comes on. So now we have the 2 bottom middle, the 3 side, and the 1 top. and all that's left are the 3 on this side over here. In order to get these to close, I'm going to put a piece of wool right here with redstone dust directly on top, and then 2 pieces of wool right here with redstone on top, and then out of the side of this top sticky piston right here, I'm going to put 1 more piece of wool, and you guessed it, redstone on top, and then I'm going to put 1 temporary block on the side of this sticky piston, followed by a permanent block right here with redstone on top, break that temporary block, and then a temporary block directly under this piece of wool with 1 dropper facing this direction, and I don't think it really matters which direction it's facing as long as you've got a dropper, and once again, redstone on top. From here, I'm going to put a piece of wool into the side of this piston with a repeater set to 1 tick, and then I'll go down here and put 1 temporary wool, followed by a permanent wool, and a repeater right here set to 2 ticks, and then I can break this wool, and then directly underneath this dropper, I'm going to grab another observer and make sure that it is facing into the dropper so that the red dot is facing down. From here, I can take a couple of pieces of wool. This top one right here is temporary, so we can go ahead and break it and put a piece of redstone dust on top. What we're working on right here is the opening sequence to get all of these blocks to retract when the pistons are powered off. The activation circuit actually to get all of these to close is already complete. So let's give it another quick test so we can see the progress as we have gone. All of this is pretty straightforward. The only difficult part is getting these 2 blocks into the correct position. The rest of these, it's literally just powering them to make sure that they get extended. So here we go. Yes, absolutely beautiful. And I don't know if you noticed or not, this is a spiral piston door, which means it starts in one corner and spirals around until the whole thing closes. This sequence is just so fun to watch. However, if I go back up here, I can remove power from this door to get the pistons to retract, but that middle block is left sitting there. I need a way for this and this to extend to grab that and pull it down, and that's the next part of the circuit and the most difficult part of the circuit to get right because the timings have to be exact. So coming off of this redstone dust right here, I'm going to grab 1 more observer and place it directly into the side so that the red dot is facing that direction, followed by a block right here, a temporary block right here, followed by a permanent block right here. I can break that temporary block, and on top of this wool right here, facing out of this wool, is 1 repeater set to 2 ticks of delay. Then from here, I'm going to place 1 wool into the side of this repeater so that it is separating these 2 with 1 piece of redstone dust right on top, and then a repeater right here set to 4 ticks of delay. I'm going to put a temporary block right here and leave it there for now, and put another permanent block with a repeater right here set to 1 tick or default, and then some redstone dust right here, which, if you didn't know, observers, redstone can go through them, kind of like glass. It's a really cool trick if you're trying to get redstone to be read by the repeater and also reroute to another direction. It's pretty cool. And last but not least, I need to put 1 piece of wool right here and then break that temporary wool with a piece of redstone right here, and that should be the entire door completed. As long as I've done everything correct. It looks correct. It looks kind of scary and massive and insane, but it's actually not too difficult to understand if you give it a chance. So let me reset that observer, and I'll reset that block up there so that we can give this a full test from the beginning. And then maybe I'll explain a little bit more how it works. We've kind of been doing that along the way anyway, but I want to make sure you guys understand this because it's always confused me until I learned how to do it. So I'm going to put a torch here and the whole door closes up. Absolutely beautiful. And when I turn the power off, it's going to open, and there goes the piston to grab that center block. Absolutely amazing. You can see that there are several repeaters here set to different timings, and that is very important to get these pistons to fire in the correct order so that these 2 blocks return to the correct state. So essentially what we have happening here is when this loses power, this piston retracts and pulls this block down. And then this observer detects that change and then pushes this piston forward to pull this block backward into its correct position while all of this redstone stuff is happening over here. The very next thing that happens is that this piston gets pushed up by being powered here, and while this piston is pushing up, this piston is going to get powered by this block to extend and grab this block. And then it will quickly retract and pull this block down to here. And then this observer will retract and pull this piston back down. And then this repeater right here will power this piston again to reach back up and grab the middle block, which is now sitting in this spot, and pull it back down into the default position. It's a lot. It's crazy. It happens fast. Maybe put this on half speed if you're trying to watch it. But just know all of these repeaters and the positions that they're in make all of that happen in the blink of an eye. You ready? There it is. You blink and you miss it. Absolutely insane. Now, this is a pretty standard 3x3 piston door. It's not doing anything crazy unique aside from the spiraling effect, which has been done a million times. And that's not going to make this the coolest piston door you've ever seen. It's just going to make it a regular one. And it also doesn't explain why we've got this much space in here. It's massive. However, thanks to my friend HWCRebel, we have an incredibly cool Indiana Jones Tomb Raider Uncharted style puzzle door, and that's what we're building next. I'm gonna try to use different colors of wool for each part of this build just so that it's a little less confusing to look at. And we've already used blue for the door, so I'm gonna go over here and take some purple wool, and I'm gonna come out of the side of this observer right here. Temporarily, we'll break all of this in a minute, but I'm gonna go 25 blocks back and actually 24 blocks of wool. So this is 24 blocks away, and on the 25th block, I'm gonna put one copper bulb right here. These brand new copper bulbs in the 1.21 update are absolutely amazing. Not only do they look cool, but they function really well for redstone contraptions. I'm going to put one piece of wool underneath this copper bulb, and then I'm gonna scaffold up and put wool on all four sides. And then I'm going to look at the door to make sure I'm going the correct direction, and I'm going to place one comparator facing toward the door and one comparator facing away from the door so that both of these comparators are detecting what's going on with this copper bulb. Then I'm going to put one comparator right here facing into and one comparator right here facing into the copper bulb, and we'll just leave all of them at default for now. And then I'm going to start working on this back one right here by placing a piece of wool right here and right here, and then another wool right here, here, and here. Then on top of this back wool right here, I'm going to put one hopper, and inside of that hopper, I'm going to place 3 stacks of sub to BluJay lapis, which you should absolutely do, and I'm going to put 43 right here in this slot, and I'm actually just going to drop 1 right here and 42 right here just to make sure nothing falls inside of this hopper and fills up this last slot. It has to be exactly 3 stacks and 43 items in order for this skulk sensor to calibrate correctly, which I'm going to place right here so that the purple stripe is facing toward the hopper. And as you can see, it's already gone off. So I need to go ahead and turn that bulb back off. And before it goes off again, place a comparator right here. And maybe I need to do it one more time. There we go. The next thing that I need to do is go ahead and take a target block and put it right here next to this comparator with some redstone dust directly on top. Then from here, I'm going to grab some wool and make an L-shaped pattern going back toward this comparator, followed by more redstone here, another target block here, and a repeater set to 1 tick of delay right here. Then out of the side of this block right here with this redstone dust, I'm going to take 1 redstone torch and put it right here, followed by a temporary block right here, 1 block here, and 1 block here, and then I can break this block. And on top of this block right here, I'm gonna grab some redstone dust with a repeater set to 1 tick of delay. And now that I think about it, I actually want this copper bulb to be on by default. So no big deal. I'll just put a button right here and turn that bulb on, and you see all sorts of magic redstone things happening. We'll get to that in a minute. I am nearly done with this circuit, but before I can call it complete, I'm gonna grab an observer and I'm gonna put it directly over this comparator right here, facing down, and then 1 piece of glass directly on top of the copper bulb with redstone dust here and here, followed by 1 more target block right on the side of this redstone right there, and then a redstone torch right here, and then a solid block of your choice. I'm going to use a block that I'm actually going to use in the palette for the build above ground, and then on top of this block, I'm going to put 1 more copper bulb, and I want this one to be off by default, so I'll break that torch and then just power it again. And last but not least, I'm going to take 1 single decorated pot and place it right here on the side of this block, and this is going to be the floor or somewhere around here. But the important thing is, when I rattle this pot, some magic things happen. And when I try to rattle the pot again, it does not reset. This is very, very important for this lock system to work. However, I am going to go ahead and reset this back to default. And before I explain to you how this works, I'm going to build 5 more of these. And keep in mind, Right now, we have redstone that is reacting to this comparator right here, and redstone that's reacting to this comparator right here, but this one and this one do not have a function yet. Hey, also something I discovered while I was building these and being frustrated about not having enough target blocks, that block right there and this block right here don't actually have to be target blocks. Hey, actually, don't listen to me and ignore all of the rest of this stuff. We haven't got there yet. Just wait. That block doesn't have to be a target block, but this one does. If this isn't a target block, this redstone doesn't actually connect to that block and power that repeater. So just ignore everything I just said. Moving on. Hey everyone. Hi. I just got back from a week-long business trip, and my ridiculous server mate, Prowl, has been busy. He's doing some sort of a weird 24/7 live stream right now where he's been live for already like 5 days, and he's got nothing better to do than come destroy my property. Look at this. Originally, he dropped like 200 bunnies over on my property. There's still a few of them over here, but I managed to bring them right back over to him and drop him in his bee farm and clean all of his copper, which it's still not fully oxidized again. This is hilarious. Maybe we just for fun, we'll go in here and we'll do it again. I'll just do 3. Well, I'll be nice. I'll let the rest of this go. Anyway, he came in here and killed all the bunnies that I delivered right back to him. How rude! Not to mention, Prowl had the audacity to turn all of those rabbits into rabbit stew and put them on my wall. I'll deal with this later. But more importantly, he's dropped some pressure plates and some levers and a random ominous banner, and there's a bell somewhere in here. I've heard it dinging multiple times. He left me these signs over here. Your rabbits got loose in my bee farm. Don't worry, I gathered them up for you and put them in a safe place atop your beautiful building here. Prowl, you gotta find something better to do, man. What does this do? And now he's destroying my property. I don't even know what that was. Was that TNT? That was TNT, wasn't it? Absolute failure of an attempt. What does this do? Nothing. What does that do? Still nothing. That's probably the only thing here that did anything, and I just happened to trigger it first. How lucky am I? Anyway, I don't have time to clean all of this up right now. I gotta get back to my build, Prowl. I've been gone for a week. I can't live like this. With all of the Prowl pranks set aside, I've realized something about this room. Actually, a couple of things. It's way too big. I don't know why I dug all this space out. I thought I measured it correctly. Apparently not. So we got extra room to work with. The other thing is these pots are actually a little bit higher than I want them to be in relation to that door. So I may try to move them down, and or I might rip out that door and push it up a couple of blocks before this is over. I haven't decided yet. Maybe it'll be both. At any rate, all of these lock mechanisms are done, and if I toggle each of the pots, you can see that they do work, and they stay locked in their state of being on. Another really important aspect of this build is to go to each skulk sensor, go over by 1 block and up by 1 block, and put a piece of wool here and here on each side of the skulk sensor where there is a module directly next to it. That will prevent the pots from interacting with the skulk sensor right next to it. I've done that for each of these. And now I need to get the combination working, because right now I can just click any of these in any order and they'll come on. So in order to set the combination, I need to choose which module is going to be the first. And I'm just going to choose this one in the front right. I mentioned earlier in the video that there are a couple of comparators that are not used yet. This is the one that we're going to use right here. And I'm going to put 1 solid block directly beside it so that the comparator is facing into it and providing power. Then I can go underneath here and put 1 block right here and break that temporary block. And I know you can't see it, but I'm going to put a piece of redstone on top of this block. And if I jump, you can see the very edge of it. It's lit up right there. All I got to do now is put a torch on the side, and that's going to power off that torch. And then choose the next lock in the combination, which maybe will go over to this far corner. And I need to locate 1 block specifically, and it is this one right here. It's easy to tell which one it is because it's the only redstone that bends from one comparator to another. So I'm going to go directly underneath this block as well and put a couple of temporary blocks right here with a redstone torch directly on top. What this is going to do is permanently turn this redstone on and lock this entire thing in place until the signal over here inverts inverts, allowing this redstone torch to shut off and unlocking this whole mechanism. So, if you see what I'm talking about here, I can go ahead and rattle this, and absolutely nothing happens, especially if you break the pot. The reason for this is that when I rattle this pot and send a signal to this calibrated skulk sensor, it powers this block, but this redstone by default is locking this comparator, so it cannot invert the state of this copper bulb and then do all of the rest of the magic. So now what I can do is take a redstone line out of the side of this redstone torch and run it all the way over to meet up with this block. And instead of having a block with a redstone torch on top of it, I'm going to put a block right here and put a redstone torch on the side of it. And then on top of here, I'm going to run a redstone line all the way across. So now I have my first two locks set. If I go over here and rattle this pot, you'll notice that all of this inverts and that light comes on, and then this redstone torch comes on, which powers this entire line, which, by the way, I didn't calculate that this is gonna need a repeater. There we go. And then it's gonna power that block, which will turn off this torch, which will release the lock on this redstone right here and allow me to go ahead and trigger the next sequence. That's it. And it can get a little bit of a spaghetti mess under here, which is why I wanted to show you all of these things first before we wired all of this up. But as long as you're going from point A to point B, and then going from point A to point B of another module, you will get a sequence that will only unlock the door if you rattle the pots in the correct order. If you do this well, and you're strategic about it, your redstone won't be a huge spaghetti mess. This honestly isn't too bad, but one tip to just keep things organized, use different colors of wool for each aspect of your redstone. That way it's easier to recognize what's what. So, for example, this red wool that I've started here is going to be the beginning of the reset circuit, so the comparator that's going into each of the copper bulbs is going to get hooked up with a redstone dust and a repeater. The only exception is the far right corner up there. We're going to do something a little different, just because redstone can only travel so far. In addition to the repeaters and redstone, you might notice that I've gone ahead and built a basic layout for where the rest of the redstone is going to go on the first part of the reset circuit. And it needs to be in a massive loop like this in order for this to work. But you gotta be careful, because if you do this wrong, you could end up permanently powering the redstone, which would defeat the purpose of this whole machine and break it. I'm going to do something special at each end of the loop. And starting over here, I'm going to put 3 pieces of redstone, 1 block right here, 1 repeater set to 2 ticks of delay, another block and a comparator right here, and 1 more block, and then put redstone all around. Then I can go ahead and fill in the gaps right here and take the redstone line all the way to the other end. And I'm going to do the very same thing over here with the exception of one thing. I'm going to put a couple of blocks, a repeater set to 2 ticks with a comparator, a block right here, redstone, 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 but then right here I'm going to put 1 repeater facing this direction set to 1 tick, and this is technically the reset repeater for this module. And the reason why we need to do that is just because of the pure distance of everything. We want to make sure that regardless of where I click, there's an opportunity for this to reset fully. Just make sure it's laid out like this. Then you need to find the middle mechanism on the right and go to where this repeater is going back into that copper block and place 1 block right here with 1 redstone right here so that there is a break in the loop. The other thing that's going to make this work is going to be a comparator coming off the side of each skulk sensor, except for the first one. So since this is the first one, we can skip this one and move over to here. So I'm going to place some blocks right here, 4 to be exact, and then I'm going to move forward by 3 blocks and then drop down by 1 right here, and then making sure to keep in line with this block right here, I'm going to come over 2, and with that all in place, I can go ahead and start wiring this up. And the first thing I'm going to grab is a redstone comparator, and I need that redstone comparator to be facing out of the side of this calibrated skulk sensor with 1 repeater set to 4 ticks of delay, followed by 2 redstone right here, redstone right here, and then a comparator right here with a block right here on the side, and redstone dust linking up to that torch and the side of the comparator. And then on top of this block right here, redstone dust with a repeater set to 1 tick. So let me explain how this works before I build the rest of them. Okay, so I know this looks like a gigantic redstone mess, even more so now, which again is why I made sure to make each section of the redstone circuitry its own color of wool to make it make sense. So we just talked about this reset circuit right here. I've added one here and over there and there and right there. Again, you don't need one on the first lock in your sequence. If I go ahead and click this lock right here, I know it's wrong. It's going to send a reset signal out to the entire thing. And I do want to make note, I've made a couple of mistakes, and I want to show you what those mistakes are right now. This is just part of the process. It's good to learn, and because I've made several mistakes in this video that I wanted to include so you could see it as part of the process, I'm going to do something I normally don't do. I'm going to put this in a world download and put it on my Discord so that you can load it up into your Minecraft game and take a look at everything firsthand. Here are the couple things I corrected. The comparators going back into the bulb from the reset circuit need to be set to subtract mode. Make sure that light is on. The other mistake I made is on this comparator repeater circuit on the loop right here, only this side, farthest away from the door, needs to have redstone in the back. I had redstone right here originally so that it was like this, but if you take a look, that ends up locking the redstone. So I'm going to break that and break that. And now, whenever we go to reset the circuit, nothing should be locked. It should flicker on and flicker back off. Let me show you how this works really quick. If I go ahead and toggle the first lock, we know that that is correct. The light stays on. If I go over here and try this one, thinking maybe this is the next lock in the sequence, that light won't come on and that light goes off. So maybe I try another lock and I go over here and I try to toggle this one. I know that it's incorrect. The reset circuit sends the signal all the way around and resets the whole thing. Now, let's say I'm a genius and I get this thing right. I'll toggle that one on, and then I'll come up here and I'll toggle this one on, and then I'll go over here and toggle this one, and then toggle this one, and then toggle this one. The only one left is this. And before I show you that last one, a couple more things I want to show you on how this works. The reason why this circuit right here is important, and why this little redstone right here is the key to making everything work, is because if I try to toggle this redstone torch is locking this redstone dust, which is locking this comparator. So if I toggle this, and it sends a redstone signal around, it's going to get stuck right here and not send a redstone signal on around to reset this system, because this one is correct and it's already on. I reset the whole system really quick just to show you that if I toggle this right here, the redstone signal is allowed to pass and go send the loop around and reset all of the modules. So again, if I input the correct sequence and I get to this final one up here, I've got a little bit of extra redstone circuitry right here, which is linked up to this orange wool. And if you remember what orange wool was, toggling the correct module next in the sequence will send a signal down that redstone line, unlocking the next module. Well, this one doesn't have a next module to go to. It's got to go to the door. In addition to unlocking the door, I want this to auto reset the whole thing so that once we go through the door, all of these lights go back off. And if anybody comes down here, like Prowl, those lights will be off and he'll have to figure out the puzzle for himself. So this line right here goes into this repeater and powers this redstone line right here. It must be behind this repeater. Otherwise, the signal from here will not reach the signal over there to reset these two lamps. So let me show you how it works. I'll toggle it. The light will come on momentarily, and then it'll send a signal around to reset the entire thing. And at that point, redstone should open this door. I know today's video has been a little bit longer, and the redstone, definitely not a beginner tutorial. However, we're almost done, and we're to the easiest part by far. I wanted to make mention as well as we're getting ready for this. I did shift this door up by 2, 3, 4 blocks or so. You don't have to do that, but I wanted to, because of what I'm going to build in this room, which, by the way, going out of town kind of put me behind quite a bit. So unfortunately, I'm not going to get to the build aspect of this today. I'll probably end up doing that on a live stream this week sometime, but the redstone is actually the most important part of this whole thing. I'm going to go over here to this orange block right here where the reset circuit is attached, and I'm going to bring this out by 1 and put 1 redstone dust right on top of this yellow, and this yellow wool is going to be the activation circuit for the door. On the side of this redstone, I'm going to put 1 piston, and it's going to immediately push me off. And then I'll grab a redstone block and place it right here on the edge of this piston, followed by a temporary piece of wool, and then 1 more temporary piece of wool, and then I can break that and put another piston right here. I'm going to temporarily put a hopper right underneath this redstone block, and then put 1 hopper facing directly into the side of this hopper, and then I'll break this hopper, and then replace it so that it's facing directly back into the side of that hopper. So they should be facing into each other. Then I'll put a temporary block right here and here, followed by one permanent block here and one permanent block here, and then I can take these two out. Then I'm going to take a comparator and put it on top of this block facing out of this hopper and do the same thing on the other side. And then I'm going to put a solid block right here and a solid block right there. Last but not least, one piece of redstone there and one piece of redstone there. And then I'm going to take 20 pieces of sub to BluJay lapis and put them inside of this hopper, and they will stay locked there for the time being. And this is what is known as an Etho hopper clock. Etho is a Minecrafter that's been around for a very long time, and he invented this clock that allows you to change the length of time a redstone signal stays in one spot based on the number of items that are in these hoppers. So it's completely adjustable. We could put 38 in here if we wanted to, but I only need 20. I may adjust this depending on how quickly I want to run through that door. But the only other thing that I need to do now is run a redstone signal from here and link it up with the door right at this spot where we tested earlier. And when I put this last piece of redstone into place, this door is going to automatically close, and it's going to stay closed because this redstone block is powering that door. And that's it. That's the entire contraption completely finished. And here's how it works. I'm going to go in and do exactly what we did earlier, if I can remember the combination. And now all of these modules are activated except for this last one. And so when I activate this one, this redstone signal is going to power off, which is going to do two different things. It's going to allow power to come back to this redstone torch to reset the entire puzzle circuit. And it's also going to release power from this piston, allowing this piston to push forward and allow the clock to start pushing items here to open that door and keep it open until this redstone block shifts back. So here we go. Let's hold our breath and hope this thing works. There it goes. The door is open. The redstone hopper clock is going. And as soon as that moves back over, we should see the door close back up. Just envision with me for a moment a treasure room on the other side of that door. And also picture on the other side of that door, BluJay trapped because I didn't install a way out. So I'll see you in the next episode.